Let the record reflect we do have a quorum. Member Luger, Member Onstad, Member Yeager, and Mayor Iverson are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're gonna just, instead of open forum, what we're gonna do first is have our Eagle Scout, Robert, and I'm gonna say your last name wrong. So if you wanna come on up and address the council and say your last name for me so it's record correctly.
Hello, I'm Robert Punt, and in June I came here with a proposal to make little free library boxes for two parks in Lions Park and Goodview Park, and I have now completed my project and I would like to present it to you guys.
Awesome. They look wonderful. How long did it take you?
Planning was around 25 hours, and then like total project was probably like 50-ish.
Okay. Are you going to kind of give a little presentation on all the work that you did? Or you just want us to ask some questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys had any like comments on it or any questions about it.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to say I think they look fantastic and it's something that we needed. And thank you for coming to the park board and presenting your idea as well. Member Luker, any questions?
Where did the books come from?
I got them all donated by my family members because we have a lot of teachers in our family and a lot of kids in there, so they're starting to outgrow the books. So, you know,
Well, thanks for doing that.
yeah.
Member Onstad.
Have you seen any turnover in the books?
Yeah, we actually got a lot of books added because, as you can see in the yellow one, we did run out of books in the initial when we like posted them. But then we came back yesterday, and it's completely full now. So
Nice. We have a great community.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, and Member Yeager.
I went by the yellow one when I was taking my walk and so I checked out your books. You have a very nice selection in there.
thank you.
And it was a really great job you did. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, we thank you very much. And when is your presentation as Eagle Scout? Does that happen in spring?
To be honest, I'm not really sure yet.
Okay.
I'm waiting on to finish my merit badges, and then I have to go present the whole Eagle Scout project to the Eagle Scout board. So
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Very interesting. Well, we wish you the best of luck and
Yeah,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
yeah, thank you for the project.
You're welcome. I always love having our younger community help out, right? Do things for our community. So we're going to start with open forum. Open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the city council on items that are or are not on current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner and refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. Just a side note, we are going to go into a public hearing for the taxes. So if you're here to speak on that, you'll have your chance at that time. Does anybody wish to speak on something other than our public hearing? No? All right. Then we'll move on to number 1 on our agenda. Consider approving the minutes of the work session meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for November 21st, 2023. If there are no questions or comments, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion by Member Onstad. Do we have a second? We have a second by Member Luger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So approved. Number 2 on the agenda, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for November 21st, 2023. If there are no comments or questions, do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. We'll now go to the schedule of public hearings, which is number 3, to consider Resolution 23-12-120, a resolution certifying the 2023 tax levy collectible in 2024. Did you want to do a presentation first?
Yes, please, Mayor, if we could. We have Victoria Hoffhaus here from Abdelak and Myers to kind of go through our budget presentation for the City Council and for our audience tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Happy to be back with you again this year to present the presentation for the 2024 budget. I've had the pleasure of joining you for the last few years to provide this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. If you can go ahead and advance the slides, thank you. So the main things we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to key in on a few of the major changes impacting the 2024 budget. We're going to talk through the different types of property tax levies that the city issues and are proposed for the City Council's approval, as well as take a deep dive into the general fund, which is the city's largest operating fund and where most of the services that we provide to the community are budgeted. So those will be the three key areas tonight. So just to kick things off again with some of those high level or key items that are influencing next year's budget, we were fortunate to receive an increase in our allocation of local government aid as an outcome of some of the legislative changes that were made this past session. So we'll have about a $131,000 increase in the local government aid the city will be receiving, bringing that amount to about $387,000. So that's fantastic. The total 2024 levy that's being proposed is a 6.26% increase, which accounts to about a $321,000 increase in the levy from 2023 to 2024. And then finally, one of the other key items that's in this budget is a community service officer position for the police department. We'll talk a little bit more about the general fund as we go. City employees are projected to receive their cost of living adjustments, as well as anyone that is still stepping through the step and grade plan. All of those adjustments are worked into the budget that you are considering for adoption tonight. And then finally, we anticipate about an 8% increase to the city's workers' compensation insurance and about a 10% increase to the city's general property insurance. So we'll dig into the property tax levies next. So this chart does a really nice job of showing all of the different levies that the city issues. So I mentioned earlier, the general fund is the city's largest operating fund. It provides the provision of police services, general city administration, your general city maintenance and streets. It's different than the enterprise funds, like your water, your sewer, the utilities. So that levy is increasing about $547,000. That's the very top line. Right below that is the Economic Development Authority levy. So that's the group, of course, that works to solicit new business, new commerce into the city of Wyoming. That very next category that is the capital levies for the city. So the capital levies for 2024 are decreasing, and that's primarily a result of how we've modeled one of the larger capital purchases over a 2-year period, that Mack truck, as well as utilization of some one-time public safety aid for one of the purchases, as well as, or it's important to note that that's where we deposit the local government aid for the city, so that's what is helping bring some of that relief to those capital levies. On the debt levy side of things, so that very last category, those are the required debt levies for the bonds that the city has issued. And so those will kind of ebb and flow from year to year just based on the principal and interest needs in each of those different funds. So overall, those debt levies are decreasing by about $125,000 for next year. So pulling that all together then, again, bringing back that $321,000 levy overall, which is a 6.26% increase. At the same time, the city recognized a 10.41% increase in its tax capacity. So that's the valuation of all the properties within the community, business, residential, and so on. So some nice growth in the tax capacity there. Those two pieces come together to form the city's tax rate. And so for 2024, we're anticipating that the city's tax rate is going to fall just below 1.5% to land at about 37.89%. And that is the figure that gets used to calculate property tax bills. So this chart just does a nice job of showing how important or what a big component of the general fund that property tax levy is, right? Again, it's being a service district. It doesn't bring in charges for service like your utility funds do. So its primary source of revenue is the property tax levy. So the bottom graph, of course, represents that general levy and its change over time as we have cost of living adjustments, since it is largely a service fund, right? And so its primary cost is personnel. As well as the next category above it is your debt service levies. Those are the next biggest category of the property tax levy for the city. This chart just shows how the city's tax rate has changed over time. So the city council does their due diligence every year and works to, kind of hold the line as best you can on property taxes, while also recognizing that the last few years we've recognized significant inflationary pressures on budgets, unlike businesses and other organizations within the community. But overall, the city has been able to have a reduction, with the exception of 2022, every year in its property tax rate. The next two charts are going to show you a couple of illustrations of how the tax rate and the levy and the change in tax capacity or the tax composition of the city can affect some sample properties. So on the overhead right now, what you'll see is 4 different sample valuations for a residential property and 1 sample valuation for a commercial property. And so this chart assumes that there was no change in market value, which we recognize that market value changes are happening, ebbing and flowing all the time. And so just solely based on the movement that we saw in the tax rate, if there was no change in the market value of a property, they could potentially see a tax decrease in their city portion of the tax bill. That's important to call out, right? Because that's the piece we have the influence over. So that's what this illustration shows. But if we move to the next one, you'll see what a more likely scenario is. Again, this year, we're anticipating about an 8% increase in residential market values. And so this illustration shows you what the more likely scenario is for a property if they experience that typical change in their market value. So for example, a $216,000 home could see their city portion of their property tax bill increase by about $28 for the year. The next 3 slides are just going to kind of talk through, again, that interplay between tax rate, tax capacity, and the city's levy. So in this illustration, if the city kept its property tax levy the same from 2023 to 2024, but at the same time, we recognized that increase in tax capacity that we've had, or that growth in the valuation of the city, what would happen is we would see a decrease in the city's overall tax rate of about 3.71%. The next slide shows a scenario a little bit different. If the city council wanted to have its main focus to be, we're going to hold that tax rate constant. We're going to try and keep that tax rate the same year over year. Meanwhile, our tax capacity is changing, it's increasing. What that means is that the city could increase the levy by about $534,000, okay, or it would have been about a 10.41% increase in the property tax levy. The last scenario is the scenario that sits before you tonight. And that's the scenario where we had that $1.3 million in tax capacity growth. At the same time, we adjusted the levy by about $321,000, and that produced a reduction in your tax rate of about 1.48%, bringing that tax rate to an anticipated 37.89%. So I'm going to take the last few minutes here and just talk through that general fund budget in a little bit more detail, because again, that general fund is what makes up the majority of the property tax levy that the city is issuing. So as we look at revenues within the general fund for 2024, there are some adjustments to a couple of line items. Specifically, we made an adjustment to the building permit, the anticipated building permit revenue, to just better reflect the trends that have been occurring in housing and development over the last couple of years. So a modification was made there. However, the biggest change that was made is to the property tax line, increasing the general fund property taxes by about $547,000. So flipping over to the expense side of things, There's a few different departments that experienced some changes, and I'll just note what those are. In the city clerk's office, we had adjustments, as mentioned earlier, for wages and benefits and COLA, but that's also where we account for some of the increases in the workers' compensation and the property and liability insurance that I mentioned at the opening of the presentation. In addition, we budgeted an additional $5,000 for networking of the city computers. Within the elections department, we are showing an increase there simply because there's going to be 3 elections taking place in 2024. And so that requires judges, equipment maintenance, and a lot of different things associated with that. Within the police department, again, we've got the increase in wages and benefits, to reflect the cost of living and step increases. But we also have that part-time community service officer that's been added. There too, in that department, there are some expectations around increased insurance costs. Those have been modeled in, as well as some increases in the technology maintenance contracts. That accounts for about $32,000 of the increase due to the need to implement some cloud-based records management systems for the police department. And then finally, within PD, there's a wellness program that's been incorporated into the budget for $12,000. We have some expectations for recruitment costs of about $3,000, and then we've got some line item budgeted for medical supplies and equipment that increased $3,000. Within the fire department, we added an equipment line item for $16,000 for replacement of lifting airbags for accident scenes, hose replacement and replacement tool sets. Within the building department, the primary driver there was, again, just the personnel costs and the adjustments related to that. And then finally, within the highway, streets, and roads department, we had an adjustment, expectations for increased costs of supplies of about $7,000. Again, made the adjustments for insurance premium expectations. We adjusted repairs and maintenance by about $5,000, and then salt and sand costs by about $15,000. So those are some of the key drivers on the expense side for the city's budget in 2024. This snapshot just shows you, again, I talked a couple of times now how the general fund largely is a service department. The provision of police and public safety services is one of the biggest categories within the general fund, as well as the general highway, street, and road maintenance being that next category, coming in at just under 20%. But it's just a nice illustration of all the different things that the city accounts for within the general fund. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions the City Council has for me that I can address for you this evening, but thank you for letting me present.
Yeah, thank you. You do such a great job. What I'm wondering is, Council, if we go into public hearing, have people come up and speak, and then any questions they have can be answered. So we will need a motion to go into the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Member Onstad. Do we have a second? Second by Member Luger. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so we are in public hearing, and so we ask that if you'd like to come up and address the council and ask any questions, please come up and state your name and your address, and we'll be able to help you out with other questions you have. Anybody? Now's your time to speak about our taxes. Did you want to come up and speak? Yeah, come on up. Just state your name and your address.
I think this is the first time in my life I've come up for this reason to talk about taxes. But I got this wonderful form called Proposed Taxes for 2024. I understand it's exaggerated from what usually happens. I get that. But I'm looking at, and I have to go up and talk to Chisago County, at the valuations of homes that are, at least in my neighborhood, are doing this. My valuation for this coming year went up proposed on here, $106,000 again. $120,000, excuse me. And I'm concerned about that. Then I looked at what's proposed for you all. And my tax load here is going up another, according to this, $567. And I just have to say I'm concerned. I'm on a fixed budget, fixed income. I like living in Wyoming, I really do. I don't like the tax load I'm paying for Chisago County generally, that's the truth. But I understand, I like the privilege of paying for what I get, and we get a lot. We get a lot. Thank you. for your service, you all and the fire department, wherever you are. I thank you for that, and I really like paying for that. But I wanted to say to you, I'm glad to hear that you're keeping the budget down. I thought I heard 6%. That's a lot of numbers for a person who doesn't come to these meetings very often, and it's a little overwhelming. But I am part of that residential group you were talking about. So, and I know that the house of my neighbor is selling well and they sell high. And I know all that. I should have lived somewhere else maybe, right? But thank you for listening. Please keep these taxes down as much as you can. It is a burden for those of us on fixed incomes. Okay?
Can you state, I don't think you
Oh, I'm
stated your
sorry.
name and address.
I'm Robert Rosenbaum, Bob Rosenbaum, my wife Pat's sitting back there.
Awesome.
We live at Grizzly Court.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Yep, appreciate that. Anybody else that's here that wants to speak? No? Okay. So if not, we need a motion to go back to our regular meeting.
Motion?
Motion to go back. Member Onstad, do we have a second? Second by Member Luker, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're back in regular session. So I have a few questions to start with, and then we'll kind of go from there. So the first one, I ask this every year because there might be new people watching. Who is the one who changes the value of your house? Who is responsible for that?
Administrator Linwood will correct me if I have any of the timelines incorrect. But the very simple response is the county assessor's department does the valuations for the city of Wyoming.
Okay. And so how do they value that? Do they come out to your house, or are they just like, this is overall what the state of Minnesota says you have to do? Because the state of Minnesota has a certain range, correct?
I think they will go out, and when they go out and look at different houses, they're looking at the market, and they're looking at comps within the area, comps within the city, comps within the county, and then they'll identify those valuations of the homes. But obviously, you do have the ability to talk to the assessor, and there will be times that you can file a petition on that to discuss that in greater depth. There is, if the state believes the county is not doing its diligence in regards to valuations, they can step in. And they will review that and look at that.
Okay, thank you. And then can you just briefly say what LGA is and what we do with our LGA?
Sure.
LGA stands for Local Government Aid, and it's an aid that's passed down from the state to the cities with the intention of helping to reduce the property tax burden. The city of Wyoming utilizes those dollars for capital, which is a really good fiscally prudent policy. We've had years where cities use those dollars to offset their general fund or offset operations, and we've had times where late in the year we found out because of budget cuts at the state level, those dollars have had to be cut, and it puts cities in a really tough spot as far as their operating budget is concerned. Taking the approach of putting those away for capital and future savings is certainly a much more conservative and safe route to go.
Especially when last year they cut it and we didn't get it and that kind of thing, which we were one of 25 cities or some crazy thing.
We were one, correct.
Yeah, okay. And then the CSO officer, Chief Bauer, can you explain what that CSO officer is and why Wyoming needs it? It's not like adding to the police force, but it is, but what is it used for?
Right, it's a part-time human service officer position, and it is essentially a college student that is looking to get into law enforcement. And in '24, we're actually funding that with the public safety agency. So that, it's a little confusing why it's in the budget, but it does get backfilled with this public safety money that we're receiving.
Okay, so it's basically paid by the state right now with some grants that are coming through to help cities try to attract officers and starting when they're younger.
Correct.
And in, what would you call that? Like an intern program almost?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Let's see, I actually think that's all the questions I have on that. So we'll start with Councilmember Yeager.
After the state aid money runs out for the CSO officer, will that be a budget item then?
That would be up to council at that point.
I take it as a yes. That was all my questions. I'm glad to see that it went down from the do not exceed of 9% down to 6.26%, but I still think that's a little high. And the gentleman being on fixed income, I know where he's coming from.
All right, Member Luker.
I have no questions. I think it's actually really remarkable this came down as much as it did. And I really appreciate all of the work and collaboration between city staff and council. So thank you for that.
Member Onstad.
I'm looking at the increases in workman's comp, general property insurance, and health insurance, and it's 8 to 10%. Can you talk about that? And is that something that we can affect? And how much does it affect our overall budget?
So, in regards to the property liability and the workers' comp, there is a significant impact. The League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust is the insurance holder for the city and most municipalities within the state of Minnesota. But those costs are something that we share, I guess, together, and that is truly our only option for our insurance providers. So that ebbs and flows from year to year, but there is a fairly significant cost on that based on the classification of our employees and the duties that they do. A police officer or a public works individual might have a higher workers' comp than someone that's at a desk. So that's just something that we kind of have to go with the league. We wouldn't have any other opportunity to really look at other insurance options.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'm actually very happy that it did come down from where it was at. That was a little scary when we first proposed that. It's always very scary when you first get that letter, the proposed property tax statement in December. They left. I was going to talk to them about that. I know that my husband questions it every single time it comes in, and being mayor, and he's like, "Can't you do something more than that?" No, I can't, honestly. So I am very happy where it landed. As somebody who is married and been married for a long time, and a husband that is retired, and I am the only one working, I do understand income levels and how it affects people, and I think that we have been very, very good stewards with our taxes, our property taxes that our residents pay. Nothing in there is wants; it's all needs, and it's things that make our residents a good place to live, our city for our residents to live in. So. I applaud all the departments for the hard work that they have done for this property tax levy for the year. So with that, I will make the motion to approve Resolution 2312-120, a resolution certifying the 2023 tax levy collectible in 2024. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Number 4, to consider Resolution 2312-121, a resolution approving the proposed 2024 expenditure budget for by departments. So, do we have another presentation, or are we good? No, we can just go right ahead and knock that off. Okay. I will make the first motion to approve Resolution 2312-121. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, consent agenda, number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, the longest possibly in the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, we need a motion to approve 5 through 15 on our agenda.
So
We have a motion to approve by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. So acknowledgement of receipts of reports of officers, boards, commissioners, and department heads. Number 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Does anybody wish to pull an item from the boards for further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Number 21. We're playing musical chairs? Okay. All right, number 21, to consider Resolution 2312-132, a resolution establishing water and sewer rates for 2024 through 2028 and SAC and WAC fees for 2024 through 2028 based on the rate study completed by Erickson Northstar LLC. Mr. Who's going to speak?
I can start with that,
Okay,
Mayor,
thanks,
members of
Mr.
council.
Underwood.
You have received the final report for our utility rate study, and when we do have Mr. Nick Dragisich and Mr. Al Erickson tonight to do a brief presentation for the council to kind of surmise the overall study and some of the recommendations. So with that, I'll turn it over to these gentlemen if you'd like to just kind of do that for us.
I told my partner that the best-looking guy should get up first, that's why I got up.
I can't say anything because you're both here, so thank you, at the same time.
So I'm Nick Dragisich, and my partner here, Al Erickson. We went through a very detailed presentation. We'll try and take it a little higher level tonight, so not to repeat every comma and quotation mark. You know, we were hired to review and analyze the water, utility, and sanitary sewer utility funds to make sure they had adequate revenues to pay all their operating costs and meet your cash reserves, pay for your capital costs, and we also looked at your WAC and SAC fees, such we had not quite completed when we did the presentation.
So we looked at a great deal of information. If you recall, the last time we got together, we went through an extensive PowerPoint presentation and discussed all the information that we did receive from the city engineer, and your sewer district. We also looked at actual financial information, historical financial information, and the actual financial information through September this year, and used all that data to make the projections that we worked on. And as you can see, at least in the water, if you recall the discussion we had about the water fund, you have had a history recently, last number of years, of having an operating deficit. So the goal kind of was to try to ramp that up slowly, get that up so you're operating in the black on that. As we crunch through all of those numbers, what we're recommending to you is to come up with about a 3.5% increase this year and in each of the next succeeding years for the first 5 years of the plan, and 3% thereafter. What that'll do is that'll get you into a surplus position in the water fund by about 2028, and also ramp up the fees gradually. And also we talked about, if you recall, the cash reserves. The city has a well-established policy talking about what your cash reserve should be in both your water and sewer fund. As it relates to the water fund, by raising the rates at this point, you will stay just above that amount. And we took a look at comparability with the number of cities you asked us to compare to, and as you recall, even with this rate increase, which amounts to about, for an average water user, residential water user, just a little over $1 a month is the difference that you'd see on that. That still keeps you very favorably in comparison with the cities that you asked us to compare you with. In fact, you're actually lower on the water rates versus all the other cities. So with that, I think Nick will talk about sewer.
And one thing I'll add on the water rate side, after a conversation at the last meeting, Al and I went back and said, what would you need to raise the rates to have the operating income be positive in the first year? And it was about 11.5% in the first year, and about 4.5% in the second year, to bring those up and be positive. Our opinion, when we first looked at that was, that was a fairly significant increase in impact on customers, and that's why we've recommended this more gradual approach, which will allow people to budget and accept those increases a little more favorably. In the end, the dollars are the same.
Yeah, you get exactly the same spot. It's just a little easier to ramp it up and easier on the utility customers during that time period.
On the sewer utility, we actually are much more favorably positioned because the sanitary sewer district is going to have a reduction in their debt service payments because the bond is being retired. And so your costs are going to go down $285,000 in 2025, which is a very significant amount. As a result, we did not see any need to increase the sewer rates at all. You have positive operating income every year, you exceed your minimum cash requirements, you have money to fund all your capital outlay. And I can tell you it's a difficult thing for a consultant to tell you to do, because if you don't raise rates for all, people expect them to never go up. And we usually advise our clients to raise them, on a gradual basis and maintain them. But given that large decrease, there's no justification to increase the sewer rates, in our opinion. And so we've recommended no rate increase there through the entire period. Now, That being said, is based on a lot of assumptions. We did a pretty good job 5 years ago. Things pretty much came out how we projected, but you never know. You could have some unexpected things come up in either utility that will cause you to have to revisit those rates. So we're recommending those rates, and that you adopt your rates for a 3 to 5 year period. Why do we say that? Well, raising rates is always difficult. And if you raise them for a longer period of time, people can plan for them and budget for them more effectively. We also say you should review them every year, though, and you may need to adjust them based on what happens or changes. But if whether I'm a residential customer or a large commercial customer, I can look out and say, well, I have a pretty good idea where my rates are going to be over the next few years. And we see more and more cities doing that to provide that certainty.
And the reason for reviewing it every year is just to keep a check on everything, to make sure that's where it's at. Generally, you aren't going to see any huge hiccups as time goes on, but then no one predicted the housing crash in '07, and odd things like that do come up. That's why a budget is a budget. And it's a plan that usually works out quite well. However, you should check on it every year just to make sure that the assumptions that we've all made are working pretty much to the norm that we expected.
And the last thing we did was we got all of the sewer and water asset information from the city staff, and we went back and reviewed the SAC and WAC charges. There's a number of publications that are used to guide these kind of studies. American Water Works puts out manual M1, and the Water Environment Federation has things financing for wastewater utility, and they're like the Bibles of rate studies. If you go to court, you want to make sure that you base those things on those documents, because they're what are used universally. We did not find any need to increase either the WAC or the SAC based on our analysis. It's fairly complicated analysis. There's no one single approach, but rather 4 different approaches you can take. But as we looked at it, we saw no need to increase either one of those at this time. Again, as you move forward and you incur some more capital costs, add more assets, you may want to revisit that. But right now, they look like they're adequate.
Okay, fabulous.
So with that, we take any questions. We've been a little more brief, but we didn't feel there's much value in going over everything we did the first time.
We were here.
Yeah.
Right? Awesome. All right, we'll start with council, and let's start with Member Onstad.
No questions.
Member Yeager?
Well, open up the paper last week, saw that the sewer commission raised their rates 6.9%. Did you take that into account when you did the sewer rates?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we had their budget actually for 2024, which included their capital outlay plan for 24 through 28, and we incorporate all of that into our projections.
Okay, cool. And then, could you once again confirm that when we get about past, I'm looking at here, up to about 2027, that we would be operating in the black with depreciation included, and so that in the future, I'm not seeing the historical chart saying we've been operating at a loss for for years upon years.
Yes.
Yeah, all things being equal, that's exactly correct. We expect the model to be fairly accurate, at least the first couple,
Okay.
4 years. So you are exactly correct.
Okay, because I would really appreciate operating in the black with depreciation and losing those historical.
Yes, and we spent a good
losses.
deal of time evaluating your historical trends that got you there, so we can make forward projections that we felt were more comfortable, that you'll achieve what we're actually anticipating you will achieve.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Member Luker.
I have no questions.
This is your second time that we've come to you to consult, right? Second time. You were spot on first time. So this time we're expecting the same thing. I will say this as chair of the Joint Sewer, Chisago County Joint Sewer Commission. It was really great to have those numbers for Mr. Linwood to give to you to make sure that those are in there. Before I was on council, I do remember the ups and downs and ups and way ups. So it's nice that this council has really worked hard to make sure that we plan out 4, 5, 10 years out, regardless whether it's this or it's anything else that we go to pay for. So we've worked hard on that, and I think staff and council should be very happy with the fact that we do that. I know a lot of cities don't, and I know a lot of counties do not either. So we appreciate that.
And that was one difference in our proposal. We said we'd go out 10 years. Again, further out you get, the less confidence you have in the numbers. but we did that 5 years ago. And we worked very closely with Mark and Rob and Grant, you know, reviewing all of our assumptions and all of our reasons why we're making these projections. And if there's one area where you really have the most exposure, it's in your capital improvements.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're basically the engineer, and I've been a city engineer for 20 years, so I know the difficulty Mark has. We turn to him and say, you need to replace a sewer line on Main Street, it's 500 feet, what should we put in the budget? Well, you base on everything you know today, but you haven't done any real examination yet. So it's a best estimate, but typically, you know, you find they range anywhere from, you know, 10 to 50% over what you thought, because you just get more information. So that's your biggest risk. But you have a part of your cash reserve, which you establish as policy, is a 5-year average of the next 5 years average of the capital outlay. And we did a little sneaky calculation ourselves. And we said, what happens if there's 25% more cost on the capital outlay than you're anticipating, and it still works? So we want to make sure, and that was something we discussed with Rob and Mark, that we want to have a little bit of extra in those reserves so that we could have more comfort you wouldn't get below your policy if just something unexpected come up. But that's a credit to your staff. We'd like to say it was all us, but I guess from our discussions with them,
Yeah.
we made that determination when we ran that. We didn't include it as a part of the presentation, but they were aware of it, and we have a high comfort level that we can cover some unexpected increases should they come up.
And be aware that the recommendation wasn't based on the 25% increase. That
Yeah.
was just a stress
You were
check.
just kind of looking.
We were stress checking.
Stress checking, yeah.
Okay, good to know. I like the fact that we do that, right? Not a big person for surprises. All right, any other questions before we go for a vote? Okay, we need a motion to approve Resolution 2312-123, a resolution establishing water and sewer rates for 2024 through 2028. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Thank you.
And I just want to point out, you had the best of all possible combinations, a former engineer and a former finance director.
It all works great.
The engineer was better, by the way.
Thanks for coming out to Wyoming again. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. All right, number 22, to consider resolution 2312-133, a resolution amending the existing conditional use permit for the expansion of an exterior storage in the industrial district at 26443 Fallbrook Avenue. Mr. Weck, are you starting us off on this?
Ms. Lindquist is going to.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm just going to give an overview on the whole project, and I know there's 2 resolutions associated with that. So first of all, as you mentioned, the property is located on Fallbrook Avenue and is an existing business in the community. Next slide. So here's the overview. I think you probably are all familiar with this. It is located on 3 different public roads, so there's a fair amount of public view to the site. Interestingly, when we were looking at this site, we noted that while the approval or the original application was for the most southern parcel, and they're expanding to the south and the east, also the property to the north and a very small sliver to the northeast is also part of the entire site. And so you see in the resolution, one of the conditions is that that the property owner enter into a development agreement, so all of those parcels function as one site and can be separated or sold independently, and that allows some benefit to the property owner from a setback standpoint, allows some benefit to the city to require those conditions on all. Anyhow, this is the site and the location in the community. The next slide just illustrates the zoning for the site. It is zoned industrial, but it is guided for commercial. And we did have a bit of discussion at the Planning Commission that if this had been zoned commercial, this use would be a nonconformity. The next slide shows the proposal, which does not include any building construction, but is expansion of the outdoor storage again to that east and south. So it's a little hard to see, but it's in that general green, tan, gray area. They'll be proposing to put in a gravelled area, and then there's also an expansion area that is not part of the initial proposal. That's kind of that triangular piece. You can see the gray coming out. There'll be additional gravel surfacing. The entire area will be fenced. There's also some cement fencing for some safety areas within that larger exterior storage area. They had proposed no storage above the fence, and that they recognized that there would be no additional expansion areas on the property after this initial approval. So the Planning Commission did discuss this item and had recommended approval with a variety of conditions. And the entire staff report you have reflects both the Planning Commission plans that were reviewed as well as brings it up to date in terms of some of the modifications that were requested. And so I'm going to focus primarily on the changes that were made, but we do have, they're specifically addressing some of the conditions and the issues that were raised during the Planning Commission discussion. So one in particular is there's been a modification to the landscape plan. Some of the landscaping was off-site. There wasn't as much as the commission and staff had requested, as well as there was some interest in putting in some kind of filtration, vegetative buffer that around the wetland. So oddly, if you look at the drawing, there's the expansion area in the dark gray and the light gray, and then there's a pavement area, which is kind of that triangle. And in the center of that portion is a designated wetland. And so we're trying to preserve that. It is set to be preserved, but we want to make sure that there's a filtration system, at least naturally filtrating, as well as the infiltration pond that's to the south of the expansion. So that was one of the things that was requested, and I think the council is aware, this Planning Commission reviewed this some time ago. We had asked for modification to the plans before it came to the council so that you understood what they were proposing in more clarity than what was at the commission. And sometimes the written narrative about conditions doesn't really fully express what you're hoping to get out of it. So we thought a plan made more sense. So a lot of the conversation dealt with the landscaping and the aesthetics to the property in terms of the public views, particularly to the east where the trail walks by. There's a very long stretch of fence, and so there was a request to have some bump outs or some undulation literally in the fence so that either landscaping could be tucked in there, but in any event that it would not show a flat fence facade. So very similar to some of the conversations about architectural facades where you want some undulation or some change in color or something for a very long stretch. Same idea. So particularly because this is a highly visible side, the trail is there, and so the idea was let's have something a little different. So that was one of the requests, and you can see at the top of the screen the regular fence board on board, and then the undulation piece or the bump out that shown is about 6 feet wide. Also, one of the other things that's come up over time is there was discussion about a 6-foot fence versus an 8-foot fence. And as I mentioned earlier, the commission and the applicant had agreed to not have any storage above the fence height. Well, the Planning Commission felt that maybe 8-foot made sense so that it really was well screened and not as visible. In discussions internally, staff feels that a 6-foot fence height is more reasonable from the standpoint that frankly, we're not interested in having that much inventory pile up at the site. So we do want the screening. The applicant's committed to not go above the fence height, but I think one of the issues that came out at the Planning Commission is that part of the safety concerns, part of the lack of interior circulation is because of the amount of inventory on the site, and that just having a slightly lower fence may also spur them into moving their inventory through the site at a faster pace than they were doing previously. We also brought up in that triangular piece that would be to the west of the wetland. That area is currently not paved, but is clearly used for storage and some truck maneuvering. And so the original proposal at the Planning Commission was that it should be paved or it should be removed. And it was, well, actually, I'm sorry, that it should be not removed, that should be restored to landscaping because it appeared to be storage, based on the aerial. And so the applicant provided the information that showed some truck maneuvering and the need to have some of that paved. We also WSB took a look at it, and that's the drawing we have in front of you that shows that that green section potentially doesn't need to be used for truck maneuvering. And so we do want to remove areas that would not be needed for truck maneuvering because frankly, we don't want the storage there. They're, again, at a disadvantage because there are 3 fronts to this property, but certainly the intention with any kind of approval like this is to bring the site more into compliance, which means more landscaping, more screening, and really trying to make it more consistent with the goals that the city has for both their downtown as well as, their businesses in the city. So I just want to digress for a moment that we did receive an email today from the applicant about some of the conditions that are in your resolution, and they deal with the issues that I just mentioned. And so one of the things is that they would like to pave the entire area because they indicated that they do need it for truck maneuvering, but they also need it to store a semi-trailer. Which is something, frankly, that was not raised during prior conversations with them. And at this point, staff isn't really interested in making a change to the recommendation, and so that's something I'm sure that they'll ask the council about. The other issue relates again to that same area. We had asked for some curbing or something. They would like to remove the curbing because they're putting in that filtration system for the wetland or the buffer area. They wanted a sheet drain so that it's more efficient and effective for the getting the solids out. And while we do understand that, the concern is that over time we think that'll encroach, that the maneuvering and those types of things without any kind of firm edge. And so we're comfortable with an idea that has several spillways, that maybe it's a rolling curb or something, just so that there's a defined edge, so you don't have that breakup of the pavement and ultimately trucks going beyond the pavement. And then the last issue was that the applicant would like to have the fence at the 8-foot. So I'm sure they'll raise those issues for you. Next slide. So this is the landscape plan that resulted based on the conversation at the Planning Commission. You can see the buffer along that triangular piece on the west side of the wetland. The trees have been shifted onto the site, and there's some additional trees put adjacent to the roadway. And we also made mention that they're transplanting 4 trees that you can see along the Fall Brook, and that they need to, while that's perfectly fine because they of course are larger, more mature trees, they are responsible for their maintenance, and if they don't withstand the relocation, that they will have to be replaced. And just wanted to clarify that point. So I think the next slide, one of the things we talked about also when we met between the Planning Commission and Council is that they were using some of that southwest area for storage as well as vehicle parking because they were having some larger second shifts than they had initially intended. I was informed that they aren't having that big a shift now, but there is some overlap at times, and so they would have liked to add maybe more parking, which is that there's 5 spaces just west of the building. That's something new from different than what the Planning Commission saw. And I think it's right in the parking lot area. It makes a lot of sense. That's exactly the spot you should put some parking. And obviously the intention is to make sure that they're parking in an appropriate location, not on lawn and not in areas that aren't designated for parking. The next slide, just one of the other conditions when it went to the Planning Commission was to try to get more of the drainage from the expansion area and the area south of the building to the infiltration basin. So my understanding is that the city's ordinance requires new construction to meet the standards, but that old kind of is quasi-grandfathered in. We were asking for some additional movement on that to pull more drainage into that infiltration basin before it heads into the wetland. And they were able to do that. It appeared initially there was some excess capacity, so they changed some grades. They diverted more of the drainage, which is something that was desired and was still worked for them without really requiring a lot of modification to the ponding size or that type of thing. So in summary then, we've worked through a variety of the main issues that we were interested in at the Planning Commission level. I think there's some that the applicant will be bringing up before the council tonight. The conditional use permit requires a variety of standards to be found, both in terms of the permit criteria and then the findings of fact. And so the council would need to find those findings to allow for the amendment to the CUP, as well as we have recommended, let me double check, I want to make sure, 15 conditions of approval. We've taken out a couple to reflect the changes that were made, but also modified some of the conditions to reflect things that we still think maybe are lacking or but address the new plans that are before you versus the Planning Commission. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you took the old Planning Commission motion, not all the conditions are exactly parallel because of the changes in the plans. So with that, I'm available for questions.
That was a lot to unpack.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. It's okay. All right. We do have the applicants here tonight. If there are any questions, we'll start with, I think, Member Lugar, you're to start now. Can we have the picture back? Oh, what do you?
I don't have any questions off the top of my head. I'm interested in hearing some of the rationale for the proposed changes between the Planning Commission meeting and now.
Okay. Who wants to take that on? Do you want them to come up and ask that, or?
I don't
You're
want
just-
to jump the gun or anything, so if anyone
Okay.
wants to ask questions, however we want.
Okay, all right. We can do it all at one time then. Member Onstad?
I don't have any questions yet. It's a lot to take in and kind of interested to see the direction that they're going. I guess I don't totally follow with what they want to do. I do and I don't. I'm not sure that I'm getting it, but I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Okay, sounds good. Member Yeager?
All right, so on condition 11 and the 5 parking lots, it sounds like the city is okay with the additional 5 parking spots?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And the paving is new. I mean, I'm going to say the resolution before us reflects the new material, not what the Planning Commission did.
Correct. It does not reflect the request we received today. It reflects what the staff and the new plans.
Oh, we have,
recommend.
so there's a possibility that our resolution can be altered. to-
Right.
With new information that we've just received.
I believe the applicant isn't in agreement with some of the conditions, and so they may be requesting changes.
In which case, can it be sent back to the Planning Commission for further discussion? Or are we on the clock?
Mr. Webb?
Mr. White?
We are on the clock, but we have until January 16th, I believe it was.
Okay.
You can send it back to the planning commission if you like, or you can stay with the city council, that's up to you.
Okay, just figuring out the options. I have had a question about condition number 5. Exactly how many more bump outs, bump ins and bumps outs are you going to require? Because it just merely says more than November 2023 plans.
Right.
And given that everything else in this is very exacting, especially landscaping, are we talking one more bump out? And if so, why have the condition? Are we thinking 5, 10 more bump outs? Can we quantify that?
Councilmember, we sure can. They have 3. And so I think given the length of the fence, that was probably too little. And so I guess maybe double that.
You want
seems
6?
reasonable. Yeah.
Okay. And if staff wants 6, that would have to be an amended resolution, because right now, the resolution says just, more than November 2023. So they could go in and put 1 in and meet their condition.
Yeah, yes, council member, that's true. I guess I'm looking for a little bit of, if there's any feedback from the council, how important that is to them.
Any other questions, Member Yeager?
No, but I would like to say I appreciate you guys, the work you're putting in to try to meet the conditions. It looks like it's a lot of time and effort for this.
All right, Mr. Linwood, could you put the picture back up of the building, please? Or
Mr. McFarland.
Mr. McFarland, can you put,
Councilmember Mayor Iverson, the current building or
the current one, what it looks like today? Can you blow it up? Please, if possible. Okay, and if we can have the applicants come up, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so a couple questions that I have to start with, and I know we have some other questions from council. If you can explain all of the stuff that's around the perimeter going around the fence and why there is so much.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm John Peterson. I'm the Vice President of Operations for All Safe Global here on the corner. Some of you I've met, some for the first time here, so just so everyone knows who I am. The majority of all that is, it's compressed gas cylinders. So we recycle, we service compressed gas cylinders. A lot of it is dry chem fire extinguishers. Some of it is propane cylinders. Some of it is acetylene cylinders. And a large amount of it is just old inert gas cylinders, like nitrogen, argon, oxygen. Well, oxygen's not inert, but oxygen, CO2. We receive these canisters in, verify that they're empty, and if they're empty, after they're empty, we'll either recondition them and put them back into service so they're reusable. And if they're not reusable, we scrap them out. And they go, instead of ending up in a landfill, they go and they're reused, whether it's aluminum or the steel. We do not at all deal with poisonous, toxic, corrosive gases. They're not allowed on our site. So everything that we deal with, for the most part, is perfectly safe as long as it's handled correctly.
Okay, and when you say recycle or put back, why is there so much there now?
It's just built up on us over the years. We've grown as a company. We continue to grow. We have 3 buildings now in Wyoming here. I shouldn't say 3 buildings, 3 sites. Which is 3 buildings. We're looking to possibly add a 4th here in 2024. As we grow, get busier, it's just piling up on us. So there are some things that we're doing to help process this stuff at a faster pace. We want to bring in more equipment to help us with that. And what we're trying to do really is to utilize our yard space here. We have more space than we're using. We've been here at this location since, I believe, 2007, I want to say. So everything, like even our existing fence now, it's getting old. It's starting to wear down. It needs to be replaced. There's not really much for landscaping around it as it is. So I think that what we're proposing to do is going to definitely make things look a lot nicer, cleaner, professional.
Okay, and you have had 2 fire incidents during your time, right, in the last couple of years?
In the last year.
In the last year, you've had 2?
In the last 10, well, it'd be 8 months, yeah. So we had one February 28th. We had a propane fire on our back dock area outside. We had some pallets were being moved around. We believe that one of the pallets struck a propane cylinder, and that's what caused the fire. That cylinder had gas in it. A lot of the cylinders that we have out there do not. I mean, if they did, it would have been a different story, obviously. It was able to be retained, and the fire department came in and did a great job and got it under control. control right away. There was very minimal damage on that one. The incident that we just had was completely different. We had an employee doing something outside of what they were supposed to be doing and how they were trained, and unfortunately, they were hurt badly.
Okay.
And, you know, there's, in that position, we only had one individual trained on that for a reason. And again, they went outside of their training and it caused an accident, completely separate of what happened on February 28th though.
Okay, and you're asking for an 8-foot fence now versus the 6. What is the reason behind that?
The fence is already 8 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the existing one, everything that we get on these trailers, they're, you know, nowadays with transportation, everybody tries to fit as much as they can in trailers. They're stacked. Everything, all these pallets that we pull out, they're gonna be, you know, at that 6, 7, most of them are about 7 feet tall level. So now we're talking a lot of extra work, industry standard, just like all the Pepsi and Cokes we do. They come in, automatically stack that tall at that 7 feet tall. Works really good with an 8-foot fence. Right now, yeah, we're stacked above the 8-foot fence. We're out of room.
Mm-hmm.
I think with an 8-foot fence, and, you know, we're committed to keeping it below that, we're not gonna go over it. It would be really helpful for us.
And if you did go over that, I know you're promising that, but if
Yeah.
you did go over that, because my concern is how much is there. And
Sure.
I know you said that it's kind of a backlog and you have new procedures, but, you know, where is that stopgap that you don't go above that, or you don't go the 6 feet? Where is that stopgap for you guys?
You know, it's not gonna happen. We're not gonna go over that 8-foot level. It's taken us 15 years to, you know, where we are now. It's not gonna, that part of our business, the recycling part, it's actually slowed down quite a bit over the last year. I don't see that growing at a fast, you know, rate for us. The biggest thing is just being compliant with the marshal. You know, we have to have forklift roads that are so big back there now. Putting in this, these fire safety, burn control areas, I guess they call them, just to make sure that if anything does happen, it's contained. You know, that's gonna take up a lot of room out there for us. And that's a big part of this fence extension.
Okay. All right. Ms. Lindquist, so the question with the difference of the fence, we're recommending to keep it 6. I know that as the Planning Commission liaison, the Planning Commission was 6. They went with that agreement, right?
No, excuse me.
They went with the 8.
They went with
And
the
the
8.
city is recommending 6, just to make sure that the recyclables stay at a normal rate, is kind of why that recommendation is. And less of a fire hazard. I see our chief is here for the fire department. Less of a fire issue as well. Okay. All right, questions about the fence from council before we go any further?
No question about the fence.
No questions? Any other
So
questions?
currently the height of
Oh, I do.
everything right now with regard, so it's currently an 8-foot fence?
It is, and we're stacked higher than that in certain areas, yes.
Okay. What are your immediate plans to take that down and get rid of some of this stuff?
Before or after the fence extension? Gary? Right, so currently in the last month, we've moved 10 full 53-foot trailers out of there, just getting rid of stuff. You know, that's my goal right now, which is really good here for the month of, that was in November we did that. So we're just moving stuff, instead of reconditioning it and then reselling it. That's what we do, we'll take it in, and if a cylinder is good, we'll recondition it and we'll sell it. It's cheaper than people buying new ones, you know. We offer that to our customers. We've just been selling it as is just to get it out of there. We're really trying to clean it up with this fence extension, you know, project, and all the, like, the roads we gotta put in there, and the burn control sites and all that stuff. We're gonna need the space just to be able to do it, just to have somebody come in there and do the construction. So right now, we're in get it out of there mode.
There was talk about a trailer or a semi-truck? What are you
Yeah, I can
using this?
elaborate on that a little bit too. I think there's a little bit of confusion.
Can we go
there
back to
between-
fence for a minute?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right. How flammable is that fence? Because you said you had 2 fire incidents.
Yeah.
So
well-
I mean, I could see a propane,
Well, we had one fire incident outside, in the 16 years we've been there. Again, it was contained right away. It was due to our forklift trails being shrunk in on us in the winter. You know, in the wintertime,
Yeah.
we can't really move anything out there, and it's just, it was really bad last winter. You know, we made a lot of progress since then. So, our fence right now, it's wood. Yeah, it's flammable. It could start on fire and it'd go. It didn't happen kind of close to the fence, but for the most part, the fence that we're proposing to put in is not a flammable fence.
because yeah, my concern was you have another mishap and
Yeah.
Mr. Weck?
So the fence that's around the yard is a wood fence, so that's flammable. The fire code requires that they have containment areas for their flammable gases. Those are the ones that are gonna be made out of concrete block or concrete. So those are separate from the wood fence that's doing the screening around the property. Without going way too in the weeds, they're allowed a certain number of containment areas based on the size of the lot and what they're storing there. And if I remember correctly, they're allowed 2 containment areas for the tanks that could still possibly have any flammable materials in them. Once they've been emptied into another area, then they can be put out in the yard with all the other inert ones. But that's where any potential explosions or fires, if they do happen, are supposed to happen within those containment areas that are non-flammable.
so that's taken care of, and then the conditions also take care of addressing any problems we have with the fire,
Correct.
with fires.
Yeah, as long as they're following what they're supposed to do with the containment and putting everything where it's supposed to be, that would limit, exposure to the community and everything else. So it's not only having the tools and containment areas in place, it's then using them as
Okay.
they're supposed to be used.
So the other thing about fence, if they already have 3 bump outs for you, and staff wants 6, as written, all they have to do is put 1 more bump out in, and they've met the condition. And if we're gonna do that, why even have the condition? I would strike the condition.
If I may? They
Please.
could submit another plan without bump outs and say, this is what we're gonna do now. And then we either come back to the city council and say, well, they changed the plan to no bump outs. Was that your intent by taking that condition out? Or do we wanna leave the condition in to make sure that there are no changes? And say that fence is blown over or something else. So,
Oh, okay, I was not a fan of bump outs, sorry. But then I would prefer to see a concrete number of bump outs.
Anything else on that?
No, that was about it.
Okay, and then the semi-trailer that's up there, what is that used for?
Which one?
Wasn't there a semi-trailer? Something talked about a semi-trailer?
Can you turn it to the picture? I don't know who has controls here.
So the email today was that you needed the
Yep, that's the one I
pavement
wanted to
area
talk
for
about, yeah.
for the storage of the semi-trailer.
No, yeah, that one. So the picture in the middle, you'll see it's kind of like a triangle with maybe purple or blue outline there, the red. So the green area is the condition proposed to make that vegetation so we can still fit our semi trucks coming in and out of there to hit our back docks. The issue is that we have 3 tractor trailers. Now this summer, I'm gonna back it up a little bit. This summer, we were parking cars there for second shift. There were pallets out there. There was even a few barrels and stuff of storage that should not have been stored out there. That has long since been gone and cleaned up. We don't do that anymore. We do not run a very large second shift anymore. And we don't foresee doing that anymore. So there's not gonna be any extra cars parked out there or any product being stored out there. Having 3 tractor trailers, most of the time they're on the road all the time. They're gone, but sometimes they come back middle of the night and 2 of them are at the back dock and we have to park one out there overnight. Or on the weekends, because we don't run on the weekends. So on the weekends, It's not just a semi-trailer, it's the actual track semi and trailer together, it's not just a trailer. And again, most of the time it's gone, it's not even there. And when it is gone, we also have trucks coming and going all the time. So where do they park? They pull right up there and they wait their turn for the other guys to pull out. If they don't have anywhere to go, they sit on Fallbrook and they end up piling up on Fallbrook, which becomes an issue as well too.
Do you have a plant manager who is there every day watching all of this? So you're talking
I'm there
about
quite a bit.
Okay, but I'm talking every day. We've
Okay.
talked about there was somebody you trained that didn't do it right, and we're talking about, you know, we're changing this and this and that. Who is there to implement that?
So we ended up getting rid of our production manager who was overseeing the plant back in early September for just certain things. It was an internal decision. We have a plant manager there now. His name is Nick. He's been with the company for 17, 18 years. He lives here in Wyoming. Him and his family do. He's there day in and day out.
Okay, so you have somebody there. Okay, was there another condition you were questioning as well, or that you wanted to change while we're?
Well, the other condition was one that I think it had to do with the curbs. Was that correct? Is that the one that you had brought up because you were concerned about the runoff into the wetland? Yeah. I mean, that the channelizes the flow. I think Rick, if you want to talk about that, to me.
My name's Frank Brodeen. I'm a civil engineer at Woodseth, just down the road here. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question regarding the proposed curb and gutter around the paved area, and whether or not that would channelize stormwater flow through that vegetated filter strip area that we're proposing to the wetland. And I thought maybe it would just be a better solution to keep it as sheet flow so that that vegetated filter strip would perform better.
Okay, so we'll ask Ms. Lindquist to answer that question.
Mayor, members of the council, so that's the one where we could probably allow a couple of drainage ways. I think the main point again is that given the activity that apparently does occur there, we'd want some kind of curbing to define the edge. And so it could be a rolled curb, it could have a couple spillways, but
There needs to be something,
yes.
is what you're saying. Okay. All right, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answered the question.
Okay, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, your changes or whatever, that you wanted to bring to us?
Not at this time, I don't think.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. I'm gonna say this, what I'm afraid of is we have Lakes Gas, very close. And it would take nothing for an explosion for something to happen to catch fire in Lake Gas. So I'm thinking about, I will always put our residents and the safety of them first, bar none, they're always first. So I would prefer the 6 foot because, and granted, we all have the best intentions of doing the right thing, right, and getting it all done, but we also know we're only as good as our employees and policies and procedures. So I would like that 6 foot and not the 8 foot. The trailer, the curb, you've talked about that, so I guess I don't. I wanna obviously keep our filtration as clean as possible, and you deal with a lot of chemicals, right? So I understand where you're going with that, and I appreciate that. The semi-trailers, having 3 and come in at various times and being on Fallbrook, that does worry me just a little bit. Somebody coming down there in the dark or whatever, that does concern me, that there's that much trailer usage and you need a place to park it. So I guess right now what I'm saying is the 6 foot, I agree with the recommendations that we have from Ms. Lindquist and WSB, the 6 foot. I'm also not particularly comfortable with passing this without it going to the Planning Commission and letting them review it as well, but that's just me. So, Member Luger, I'm gonna go to you next because you had some questions or some thoughts and.
Sure. I guess, okay, so a follow-up question I have is this triangle where there's, do we want vegetation or do we want a bituminous chunk straight up for trailers unloading? Is the cause for the pilot because the second shift is not, as staff that you're getting some congestion in terms of where your trailers are, right?
No,
Like, what you're
well-
saying is in the middle of the night.
So right now, that area that you're seeing there,
Yeah.
where it's green, it's all gravel, it's all
Yeah.
this. So we use that for semis, they come and they
Yeah.
go. Over the summer, certain points, you know, at certain times, there'd be cars that would just go and park there, guys from second shift.
Sure.
We don't allow them to do that anymore, there's no reason for them to be there. At the time, we had a lot of employees, we were running larger shifts, especially on second. So
Okay.
that has nothing to do with the access, product that is inside the fence.
Gotcha, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, that was,
That is pretty much just a leave as business as usual, because it's gonna be, it'll be a hardship on us. I don't know, you know, for us to have to go and find somewhere else to park this tractor trailer on the weekends, because we're not gonna be able to put it, we can't park it there, and the other ones won't be able to get out. Especially in the winter time too, we have to make sure they're, you know, it's just,
what is the impact to the general area if it's just, if it goes, like, if it, and if, is city staff proposing then that it's current gravel, right? Would we be proposing to pave it if we were to take away the vegetation part?
Yeah. So, members, so initially when we met with them, they said they didn't need that space. So that was the initial, was take it out, vegetate it, let's get more of a front yard.
Okay.
Because it was also used for storage and stuff. Like if you look at the aerial, there's a semi there, there's a bunch of pallets, there's stuff. So then, since that time, they said they needed it for truck maneuvering, and so then today, they said they need it for the semi. I mean, you can always park the semi somewhere else, they don't have to expand their area that much. It's fine, I think then we would look at changing the conditions and say, there's no storage out there, but then what you will have is, what I hear them saying is, you will have a semi-trailer parked there. Which, again, part of our goal was to try to start bringing the site more into compliance, not to have a semi on your front visual way, you know, where we don't have a lot of screening there.
Because having a semi park there is not compliance with.
So this would be an area where it's just vegetation, there's no fence, it's just the natural wetland type, grassy type vegetation would provide the only screening for a semi.
Just to be clear, so you're looking at the triangle, the green side is against Fallbrook. That'll have a couple of trees that they're transplanting and then grass. So you'd see the semi because it's not that far. The wetland is on my right side, that right side. So there's no screening just because it's low, but that's not as public a view as the Fallbrook side.
Member Yeager, I'm just gonna go back to Member Luger, because she was still asking her
Well,
questions.
that's fine, it's
So,
just,
we just need to go in order.
Okay, so here's my other question then. Mr. Weck, you said that this time is ticking on this. Why?
Minnesota statute requires that the city make a decision within 60 days of
Gotcha.
them doing a complete application.
Okay.
So we've already extended that out to another 60 days, so that's when
Okay.
anytime past that, the applicant has to approve the extension. We can't do any more extensions.
Okay. I guess, from my perspective, it sounds to me like we've got three versions of proposals. One from the applicant, one from city staff, and one from planning commission, right? Which to me is kind of messy, right? Because the planning commission's whole task is to be able to interpret city code and make recommendations based on that with what you're proposing. So I'm not sure, with that not being my wheelhouse, you know, I certainly, I think we need to look at kind of the bigger, the larger impact on the community and the immediate area. And that's, I'm not getting a clear understanding beyond like kind of the fence discussion. I mean, yeah, on what brings it into compliance and what does not. And I guess we have a city code for a reason, and I think compliance is important, because we've already set that standard as a city. So I guess my bright line question is, what brings us into compliance?
Any answers to that?
It's a very broad question.
It is very, well, you know what, can I ask this question first? At what point in time are we done with that? Is there time to take it back to planning commission?
could go back to the planning commission next week, and it could be back here at the city council 2 weeks from now. So-
Okay,
So,
okay.
unless the planning commission were to table it, but.
Yeah.
Be- Because the alternative would be council rewriting the resolution on the fly now, right?
It could be, or you could table it until the next meeting and have the.
And have staff rewrite it.
Yes.
I would prefer one of those, honestly. I don't feel comfortable kind of sifting through the different recommendations and in reflection of what the city code is. So whether it's planning commission taking another look at it and then coming back to city council, if we are still under that deadline, that would be my preference. If we were really like not gonna meet that deadline, then yes, then we would have to do the work. But I would prefer to not have to do this, like sift through different things right now.
Okay. All right, Member Onstead?
If you put up an 8-foot fence, would that allow you to move some of the items that are stored kind of at the south end? One of the satellite pictures shows a bunch of blue boxes or something. My main concern was that there's trucks, the parking long-term as storage. It sounds like you're moving them, but it would still be nice to not have a truck stored out on your property by Fallbrook that's sitting there continuously. It looks almost like you have 3 docks. Is that
Yeah.
docking
yeah,
bays?
That is correct. We have 2 docks that go to the building and one's an outside dock. One of the trucks has to be moved in order to hit the outside dock, just because you can't back in, it's not.
Yeah, it does look pretty tight.
Yeah, it is tight, and I've personally have backed into those spots and it's as difficult as it is.
I'm assuming it's the east
Yeah,
dock.
Yep, that's correct. That east dock is very tough to hit. So the trailers that you see in the picture, you know, we don't park trailers out there for long. We did in the past. We had Northland Pallet is the name of the company. They used to drop a trailer there for us. And once we filled that trailer full of old wood pallets, we would call and they'd come swap it out. So that's why we had a trailer sitting there at all times. They no longer do that. They don't have enough trailers, so now we store all of our wood pallets back in the fenced-in area. And then once we have enough for a truckload, we call them in and then we have to load it.
Yeah.
So that area is not, again, it's not to drop a pallet and leave it. It's just for when our trucks come in and they gotta park there over the weekend. And again, our trucks will be gone. Or if a customer pulls in and we're at our docks, working on getting out, they'll drive up around there and wait for us to pull out so they can back in.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that we're moving everything around so you can get more storage out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And-
Yeah, and the biggest thing about moving everything around is getting within compliant of the fire marshal and his recommendations too, after our incident in February.
Yeah.
With the control areas Fred was talking about, making sure that we have those staged, making sure that our forklift lanes are so wide and all that. That was all in these plannings as well, the whole yard layout.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, yeah, to me, the 8-foot fence is neither here nor there, especially if you already have 8-foot fence. I'm just looking at where else could you put a tractor trailer that's not out in front of the building?
Correct, yeah, and, you know, obviously I've been brainstorming that all day. An option that we do have is we do lease another building over, you know, down the road, they're a couple blocks away. That's butts up right next to the freeway there. There is dock space there if we had to. It just makes it more difficult for our drivers, and
Or if
all
those-
of our trucks are service trucks, or for our service customers.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're on the road all day, stopping at customer sites, and everything that we do for those are loaded and unloaded in this building here.
I'm even wondering if those docks were herringboned, that they're built out so that they can angle in. You know,
Yeah.
that'd be expensive, but
Yeah,
it'd allow you, 3 back-end stalls that doesn't face directly north-south,
yeah, it's a possibility.
just as an option to open up room.
All right.
That's all I have.
Member Yeager, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna make a motion.
No.
Okay.
No.
I'd like to make a motion to table resolution 2023-12-133, and do I have to make 2 separate motions? I wanna table both of them. 2 separate, right? Yeah, so I'd like to table resolution 23-12133, a resolution amending the existing conditional use permit to go back to the planning commission. So I make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And I would like to table resolution 23-12-134, a resolution approving a site plan review application for the expansion. Again, I'd like it to go back to planning commission. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by member Luker. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved to go back to planning. And that'll go on Tuesday, correct? Okay. So it's basically 2 weeks. It'll come to planning on Tuesday, and then it comes back to us the next time at that. So feel free to attend both.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to number 24, to consider entering into a service agreement with Steve Duff as a contractual consultant in a part-time temporary capacity for the Public Works Department. Mr. Linwood?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. As council is aware, staff has been, I should say Public Works staff has been operating short with our Public Works Superintendent on leave. Our Assistant Public Works Superintendent, Mr. Ketting, has been working in that interim capacity in his absence, and we have been discussing ways to try to provide more support to our acting superintendent in the department at this time. We have identified a candidate that could work to provide some support for the department in a part-time capacity. Mr. Steve Duff is an individual who has over 38 years of public works engineering experience. He had worked 25 years as an engineering tech with the city of White Bear Lake, 3.5 years as the public works director for Chisago City, and then completed his career as a senior tech for the city of Hugo. He still works part-time in the summer for the city of Hugo, completing miscellaneous engineering and public works items. We have met with Mr. Duff and discussed some of the current challenges the Public Works Department has with lack of staffing and some of the significant amount of items on Mr. Ketting's plate. He would provide some expertise, public works expertise, engineering expertise, and offer administrative support to our acting public works superintendent. We are recommending that the city council enter into agreement with Mr. Duff. This would be no more than 20 hours per week at $45 an hour beginning December 11th, 2023 until February 29th, 2024 as needed. As the city council knows, we do have currently the public works superintendent position posted, and as we look at that process and when it finishes, and then potentially an individual, if there is a new public works superintendent selected, there's obviously always notices that need to be given to potential current employers. So we feel that until the February 29th one may be applicable, but we'll wait and see on that. If that is not the case, we do have just to give a 15-day notice to that individual that we'll no longer need his services at some point in time. And I can stand for any questions.
Mr. Linwood, where is the money coming out of for the $45 an hour?
It would just be essentially utilized out of the employment wage for the vacant public works superintendent position.
Okay, and there's no, we're not paying insurance, it's just straight contract work?
Correct, it is just a contractual agreement with the individual.
Okay, and do we know what do we have an average of what somebody like that would be per hour?
Considering this was done in 2015, and back then it was $38 an hour, this is this individual does live in the community, and I think he's basically just wants to help, and I think it is a very reasonable rate for this type of work.
Okay, and will he be working here or at the like an office in here desk, or?
No, he'd be at the Public Works building with Mr. Ketting.
Okay, and at any point in time, do you plan on having two positions? So whether this works out and then you also have the Public Works Director, are you planning to increase our
No,
positions?
This individual is retired and not looking for any kind of full-time opportunities or capacities, just something to try to help out his community, and I think he will offer some expertise and support for Mr. Ketting in the department.
Okay, perfect, thank you. That's all my questions. Member Yeager.
So he could be let go, earlier than February 29th?
Potentially, if we deem necessary, we just by the agreement, it's 15 days notice. So we could kind of, as we go through a process, like I said, if we do end up hiring a new individual, we could kind of feel that out based on necessary notices, things like that.
Well, you can go if earlier positions filled, basically, is what you're saying.
He would be classified as an at-will employee.
Okay.
So as long as we're not letting him go for a discriminatory purpose, we can let go as long as we meet that notice requirement.
Okay, cool. I'm not totally comfortable with this, given that last meeting, we authorized posting for a new public works superintendent. I think this might have made more sense if we had done this 6 to 9 months ago and addressed the problem there, but with imminently hiring somebody else, not, like I said, not totally comfortable.
Okay. Member Luker.
I am 1,000% behind this. I think if this provides some support to Public Works, where we know that finding that fully staffed in the department will be a potentially very long process, I think this will help out. I'm absolutely behind it.
Thank you. Member Onstad.
No questions, I'm just glad we were able to find somebody that kind of fit the bill.
Yeah. I have to say, I like the fact that it's a 15-day notice that we need to give him, so we know there's start date and until we do that hiring. I think based on police and some of our other positions, it can take a while to find the right applicant to come in and work in our city, so I'm all for it as well. So we need a motion to approve the service agreement with Steve Duff as a contractual consultant in a part-time temporary capacity for the Public Works Department. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a first and a second, a first by member Luker, a second by member Onstad. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. Okay, so after number 25 in the agenda, we're gonna do our reports, and then we have to go into closed door session. So number 25, to consider a city council work session on December 19th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Staff is requesting that we have a work session prior to our city council meeting on December 19th. Reason for this is regarding a ESST or sick and safe policy. The Minnesota State Legislature adopted this policy in the beginning, or it'll be effective this last year, effective January 1, 2024. And we need to make sure that we have this in policy in place prior to the end of the year and give appropriate notice to our employees. So we just thought that it may be easier to walk through this with council and have those questions in a work session setting. And as we look to complete that policy, we would then have that on our December 19th agenda. So with that, we just ask they'd have that work session on the 19th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, does anybody have any problem with the 6 o'clock work session on Tuesday, December 19th? No issues? Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the city council work session on December 19th, which is a Tuesday, just before our regular council meeting at 6 p.m. We need a second. Second by member Luker. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So approved. Okay, reports. We're going to start with member Luker.
I attended the tree lighting ceremony. I thought it was great. Thank you, staff, Public Works, Public Safety, everybody who pitched in, as well as our community partners. It was great. Really enjoyed it. And it was really nice that it wasn't like freezing.
It was, or no snow.
It was like tolerable.
So true. So true. All right, member Onstad.
I attended the tree lighting and thought it was really, really well attended. A lot of people there, and great temperature.
You guys did a great job
that.
picking that
Way to go,
temperature.
city staff.
Good job on that.
Take it. Better than
And
less.
then I attended the Park Advisory Commission last night.
All right, and member Yeager.
Oh, I attended the tree lighting ceremony too, and thank you all for watching, and thank you all for coming.
All right, and Chief Bauer, just a quick update again on that fill the truck. I know I probably gave 20 pallets of water just to kind of help. So if you could give an update, that would be amazing.
Sure. This year we did a little different approach by we moved it up a few weeks, the week before Thanksgiving. And that was kind of at the request of Family Pathways. Towards Christmas, it gets absolutely full. Last year it was hard to even make a drop off. So moved it up earlier than for Thanksgiving. Collected over 1,000 pounds of food items and over $1,000 in cash donations. I confirmed with Family Pathways before we went to say, would you rather have the cash or
And was it the most amount of poundage or food that we donated? Do you know? I don't know if we keep track of that.
Last year we had taken the cash and purchased additional food.
Okay.
So not really a fair comparison. But it
Okay,
was
so
very
obviously
successful.
we did.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, and so I will, I appreciate all that you guys done as well, so.
Mayor Iverson, just
yeah.
one more, I think, just to, the fire department and the Anonymous Santa, they went out. I
Oh,
think
right.
They were very successful too, I think, in regards to their,
It was amazing.
Yeah, I don't think we wrap up till almost noon before we got
Yeah.
to the building, so very good.
Any way to put a little GPS in Santa's beard to know where he's gonna be? Just, just a little, I don't know if we can do that or not, but I know there were so many more people, especially in my neighborhood, that were waiting, that was excited to see Santa. So I'm just so proud of our community and what we get done, and Santa and the whole tree lighting. It was amazing. So you guys really add to that. We appreciate that. I would, so I attended the tree lighting as well. I have to say, I give a little plug to my children, my adult children, who came and helped me count to 5, or down, because, it's a big job. So it was nice to have them there for the first time. I also want to thank the following participants, so we make sure that they know how much we appreciate them. Sunrise River Farms, a big shout out to them because they come and they give everything for free. Apples, caramels, candies, whatever, jars of stuff, it's always free. So a shout out to them. Polaris, I believe they helped sponsor the Coffee Smith, was that right?
Correct.
Yep, okay, so thanks to Polaris, great community partnership with us. WSB Engineering, we appreciate you helping. I think there was some funding in that, so we appreciate that. The Wyoming Lions Club, they did all the cookies, where in the past years we've done that as a staff. So very exciting to have the Wyoming Lions Club there. I know that they're looking for additional members to be involved, but we could not have done the cookies without them. Xcel Energy, the Pleasant Valley Cloggers, Forest Lake Dance Factory, Coffee Smith for hot chocolate, Chisago County Anonymous Santa, Wyoming Public Works Department for all the hard work setting up the holiday display. It was a lot, Joe. It was a lot, and you guys did a great job. Wyoming City Administrative Staff and Public Safety members, we could not do this event without you guys, honestly. I mean, it gets bigger and better every single year. And then Eckberg Lammers Law Firm, we appreciate what you guys do also to help make the community event amazing. So with that, again, thank you to everybody for watching. We're gonna now just take a 5-minute break and then come back and go into a closed door session.